Hello and welcome to the podcast today of Kingdom Recovery Just for Today. This is Dr. Tracy, and the topic I would like to bring you is a roadblock to recovery. Is grief or loss blocking your full ability to recover? When I first began to work with people in their recovery process, I observed that many of the individuals had a common thread that tied them all together. They had all suffered significant losses in life, and not just one loss, but multiple traumatic losses. I also noticed that most people who had difficulty transitioning from loss to healing had other common factors as well. Issues such as significant loss of key nurturers who were absent in their lives as children, and similar experiences of suffering from abandonment and rejection, all the way into their youth. Still others had been reared in addictive and severely dysfunctional environments. When it comes to healing from pain of loss, I saw that almost everyone who struggled with addiction of any type had experienced significant losses. Almost all expressed that their losses were not only relational or material impacting, but emotionally impacting as well. This was a huge revelation to me as to why some people overcome loss or addiction and why others don't until there is almost nothing left of them or they become desolate with very little or no hope for a future. This discovery brought illumination to the exposure of a root cause for addiction and a root opportunity for recovery. From this revelation, I began a quest for answers as to how to help heal people's pain caused from grief and to help them remove that roadblock of that grief that created a symptom which we generally call addiction or dysfunctional living. It could be that you have found yourself stuck in cycles of repeating the same destructive behaviors and have made efforts to change that over and over, but you've never really gained victory, and right now you feel defeated and hopeless. I also discovered this fact that might encourage you today. Have you found that you get control over the problem for a period of time, but many times you hit a particular threshold like 90 days or 6 months or even 1 year, but you just can't seem to get past that marker, and you fail and get broken again, and the cycle repeats yet another time. And each time you tell yourself with confidence that you will not repeat this cycle again. But you do. This experience causes you to lose sight of freedom. Hope deferred makes the heart sick. And the continued delay to true freedom from whatever it is that binds you and holds you back from feeling whole, successful, and excited about the days ahead. Instead of wondering just how long it's going to take for the ball to drop again and fall on your face just to begin again, torment you repeatedly, and rob you of happiness over and over again. Sound familiar? Well, I have good news for you. If what I shared makes perfect sense to you, and you can relate to my story, then the truths that I'm about to share with you will help you say goodbye to the pain of loss so you can live and love life fully again. What people don't realize is that every person on the face of the earth will suffer loss. In fact, they will most likely suffer over 40 significant losses on the average. Losses such as death, divorce, sexual abuse, moving, losing a home, losing a parent, losing a car, a friend, a pet, a job, health, money, and the list continues. From each and every one of these losses, there is an emotional pot of pain that is being filled up on the inside of you. If these things happen and we don't have someone in our life that can help us heal from the pain, then oftentimes we just add another lump to the pot of pain. One day that pot gets so full that there is not enough room for any significant lump to enter the pot anymore. It overflows into our life at that point through dysfunctional thinking, habits, and behaviors. We may find ourselves addicted to a destructive behavior, such as pathological lying, obsessive behaviors such as bulimia or anorexia, shoplifting, addiction, gambling, pornography addictions, homosexuality, lesbianism, transgender behaviors, bisexual disorders, even mental health issues such as PTSD, bipolar disorders, OCD, anxiety, issues, and even narcissistic behavior. There are many more disorders that could be mentioned here, but I'm sure you get the implication. Every one of these things mentioned is considered a disorder. Our society is doing its best today to convince us that some of them are normal in natural evolution. However, they are disorders. They are dysfunctional. We must understand that a disorder is a state of confusion or the disrupting of a systematic function of a neat arrangement of things. The more the state of confusion a society stays in gives other people the ability to have control over the thoughts and beliefs of others. I would like to present this for you to consider. If you struggle with some issues mentioned, especially addiction, you may not be suffering from a disease after all. You may just need to realign or reorder the things in your life from the disordered life that you've been living up till now by taking a look at grief and how it may be hindering your desires or sabotaging them over and over again. Putting your life in order starts and begins from within. Often we're taught to maintain control over the confusion with controlled behaviors or structures, or even through modifying the outside behaviors, not realigning them. We find ourselves using supplemental help, such as medication, to maintain a certain amount of order, structured lifestyles filled with strict regimens so that we can adequately function within society. But we are not having the gratification, liberty, or victory over specific issues and a happy, quality, and meaningful life. They're still not acquired. Why? Because we have not gone to the root issue. Our life never really gets better. We treat the symptoms of our problems instead of removing the pain we mask. We can even self-medicate with drugs to feel better, but they don't make us feel better, they make us feel different. But when the numbness wears off or the temporary relief from the pain, our life is still in the same place before we used. By using these methods, we are not successfully finding freedom. We are just managing disorders and not ever really getting our life back in a proper order to obtain freedom, not only from loss and pain, but from the various symptoms that are caused from pain, such as addiction and dysfunctional behaviors. So, the repetitious behavior that leads to self-destruction is not removed properly so that we can become healthy and strong. What a rat race. What are some of our fears if we address the pain of loss? And how do we do it? These are questions we have to ask ourselves. Perhaps the issues have been many years far removed and we're fearful of reopening those wounds because we don't know how we'll react if we open up that treasure box again. Think of that pain undealt with and unaddressed as no different than one would have a scab that begins to grow on a wound, but underneath the surface there's an infection. And if that infection is not dealt with, it'll cause even more multiplied problems to your body. There was a cut on your leg and an infection begins setting in. This situation could eventually cause you to bring about the need to amputate your leg. The infection can also reach your bloodstream, and that could compound several other health issues that could eventually lead to your demise or death. We often do not realize the severity of unaddressed pain emotionally and its compounding effects it has on our life, not to mention those we love or who are a part of our journey. In the beginning of my sharing today, I posed a question to you. Is loss or grief hindering or blocking your full recovery? First, we must understand that grief is a normal reaction to loss. Unfortunately, we live in a society that's fearful of negative emotions. We become afraid to show any significant reaction to loss because of our need for society to accept us. Due to our environment, we pick up learned behavior that is very detrimental to our emotional health and our wholeness as a person. The inability to feel accepted if we openly express our pain of loss hinders or stifles our growth as a person, and it maims our ability to positively contribute to our community of family, friends, and acquaintances. Grief can also be defined as the finality of a thing or the change. It's a change that's something in our familiar pattern of behavior. Perhaps someone dies and we know we will never see them again. Or our father was in the army and after about a year we moved to a new place, leaving the behavior of one culture to enter another. And then we did this repeatedly, but we never grieved the loss of what we had become familiar with. Whether it was friends and relationships or a school or maybe sports, each time our family moved, we had to form a new pattern of doing things. We find in our adult life unable to have any long-lasting relationships. Maybe you've gone through divorce multiple times and now you just have surface relationships and you don't commit to anyone. These cycles or issues in your life could all be connected to the unaddressed grief of your childhood that you have never addressed or were unlearned or unable to process. Have you found that others have just viewed you as selfish and aloof, confused somehow and unable to follow any healthy order in your relationships? Have you often felt misunderstood by peers and family? Until you just heard this right now, you might have never connected these two events or saw that they could be related. But now you can honestly say that you never told anyone how much it hurt you to start in a new school every year and how difficult it was for you to make friends until you no longer tried, and just labeled yourself as a loner because it hurt too much to make friends, because you would only have to leave them behind next year. So you never allowed yourself to become the person you truly are. The constant disruption to the natural, God-given order of relationships was impacted in your life in so many ways. These multiple impacts are what you've been focusing in on with no success of the change you desire. But the truth is that you've never dealt with the pain of these losses. When you tried to express them to family and friends about the pain when you were young, you were told to deal with it, just cope with it. It's a part of life, they said. You understood that, but you were still unable to express your emotional loss at that time. So you compiled and buried that pain of loss, and now years later it's showing up in so many different places. It becomes like an underground well that just keeps bursting through with no control. From the isolation to the divorces to now you're drinking to numb the pain of loneliness, the disorder in your life has brought confusion of your own identity, and you find yourself so far removed from anything or anyone you could ever imagine yourself to become. Amazing, isn't it? An unaddressed root of loss and pain becomes a tree, and that tree grows many branches and bears a lot of fruit that we don't even see, that it is our unexpressed pain that connects them all. I hope this is a revelation moment for you, that you need to explore and address the losses and say goodbye to the pain of those losses in your life to remove once and for all some of those roadblocks of your recovery. It's time to process the pain. A process is a series of actions or steps taken by a person in order to achieve a particular outcome. My friend, embrace the process. A specific series of actions on your part can remove these roadblocks once and for all. There are many paths to removing this pain. Usually it begins first with an acknowledgement of the real issue and the steps needed to remove that is expressing the pain. The first key is awareness, and the second key is truth. Truth comes from obtaining knowledge. The more you grow in knowledge, and the more you can grow in understanding. And from that understanding, you can take action that'll bring you freedom and wisdom. One of the significant losses in my life, I came to understand, was the absence of the normal order of a father in my life. Through the dissection of my family's structure through divorce, brought a disorder to the presence of my father interacting in my life on a regular basis. This certain root of loss brought so many dysfunctional behaviors and perceptions in relationships for me. I first began to read books about the loss of a father and how it affects life of a woman. Then I began to grow in the places that I had become broken in my life due to this loss, such as my own self-worth and my need for security. I also began to grow in my relationship with God and started to learn what it meant for God to be my Heavenly Father. Through a series of actions over a period of a couple years, I began to address this loss head on through gaining knowledge, changing my destructive behaviors, practicing self-forgiveness for my dysfunctional behaviors that were brought on by this loss, and talking openly to others about the loss, the pain of it, and the truths I was learning. You see, one thing I came to understand was that my abandonment from my father had impacted my self-worth, my perception of relationships with men, and overextending of myself in all relationships. My fears of losing other people and need to please people so that they wouldn't leave me, overextended loyalty to others at the cost of my own happiness. Just to name a few branches and fruits that were born on my tree. I journaled about my feelings and I wrote a letter to my father. I expressed my story to those who would hear it, and I began to forgive myself. Over a series of actions, I took the necessary steps to become free from rejection and abandonment due to the loss of my father. That series of actions brought about an end result of allowing me to love and be loved and to remove myself from destructive and abusive relationships going forward. I also am now free to love myself and do not need to live in the confusing cycle of living to be approved by others, and no longer abandon my own desires and dreams, all for the fear of being rejected or not loved the way I need to be. Thus, the cycle of unhealthy relationships or disorder in those relationships is no longer bringing continual pain in my life. The grief caused by the loss of my father in my life no longer dictates my behaviors, because I learned how to say goodbye to the pain of that loss. And now I have victory over some of the patterns of dysfunctional behavior in my life. I was able to become my own agent of change that I so desired. By removing the pain of that significant loss, I have been able to remove destructive patterns that have caused compounded losses in my life through the years. The roadblock of my recovery in healthy order of relationship has been removed. It took courage on my part to be brutally honest about my loss and to do the work internally to face it and talk about it. That really brought results that I had longed for in my life and relationships for many years. What roadblock of pain do you need to remove? Find it, or them, and work through it. By doing this, you will learn to say goodbye to the pain of your losses and see dramatic change take place in your life. You will remove a roadblock to your recovery. And I believe in taking these steps that you will find your recovery manifest quicker than you ever thought possible. And your hope for freedom from all the pain and loss can be finally tackled so you can grow into that person you were always meant to be. This is a recovery moment for you. Recover who you are. I'm Dr. Tracy, and I'm so glad you read this and listened to this podcast today. Now go and embrace the process and enjoy your journey to freedom from pain. You know why? You're worth it.